What is up, Dolphins fans? You're locked into another episode of the Phins Forecast. Today we are breaking down the Blockbuster trade with the Steelers and the trade with the Giants, netting us a tight end. Honestly, I don't think anyone had on their bingo card. Buckle up, baby. It's time to dive deep. All right. I love our intro. Hey, buddy, let's waste no time. Joining me as always, the man who's got hotter takes than a South Beach sidewalk in July. My guy, Taylor. Buddy, how's it going tonight, man?
I don't feel like that's a correct introduction, but I appreciate it, man. You're taking a stab at the hosting chair. I'm very proud of you. I think you're going to do a fantastic job here today. So
Thank you.
You said something earlier, though, about not having on your bingo card. I got to tell you, same here, man. I did not have Mika Fitzpatrick coming back or getting Darren Waller in a trade on this bingo card. But, there's a –
Crazy.
I did have the fan base arguing about Tua, though, so at least I'm hitting there.
You can check that every single day because he is a controversial topic for sure. What else what's another hot one you got on your bingo card?
I have Colin Cowherd brings up a player who hasn't been on the roster in years, thinking he's still on the team when talking about Miami's future outlook. Hype Tua Tagovailoa training camp video.
Mm-hmm.
The throw, that's annual every single time.
There you go.
Steelers getting a contract extension,
which never seems to happen.
Hopefully we do see that. And Tyreek Hill cryptic tweet, which is sure to come. Also, the apology for the cryptic tweet saying he's just trolling.
Yeah,
so it's got to be both.
And don't forget the additional tweet saying I'm going to keep Jalen Ramsey in South Beach. Yeah, well, that went off without a hitch.
Well, I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, well, speaking of Ramsey, hey, what do you say we dive into the trade? So for those of you that have lived under a rock for, I don't know, the last week and a half, right, Miami Dolphins traded Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith and a 2027 7th-round pick for none other than the golden child himself, Minkah Fitzpatrick, coming back to Miami along with a 2027 5th-round pick. Before we dive into all of the nonsense and all of the minutia of this trade, hot take, what are your thoughts? Go.
I like this trade. It does suck. Like, is this – I never got, like, the rundown. Was this just a player for player, or was this also just all one big trade with Jonnu? Because I've heard both.
Well, I've seen both, right? I saw it kind of as one package, right, where it's Ramsey, Smith, 7th for Fitzpatrick, and a 5th. But it came out
like
as
an hour
almost
apart, right?
Yeah, like two. So I want to say probably it's like player for player, Ramsey for Fitzpatrick.
Our group chat was freaking wild.
Oh, we were lit.
We needed it. We were in the dead heat of the off season.
Yeah.
We really needed that news. We were back full regular season.
Dude, it gave me the juice I needed because you're right. It was one of those things where I felt like I was just lulling to sleep, right? It was just one of those things where it's like, okay, I got to do research on the position rooms. Okay, we got to talk about upcoming, practices and joint practices and stuff. That's great. Oh, shit. Look at that. There it is. There's Chris Greer waking up and doing something.
Yeah. See, that's also the same with Chris Greer, I think there's a lot of complaints, very valid complaints about Chris Greer, whether or not he should still even be the GM here.
Yeah.
One thing, a lot of fans, whether you like him or hate him, do think he trades pretty well. So when you see Jalen Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick, you're sitting there going like, wow, that's more than what I could have ever imagined. Like, I thought it would be like a 4th-round pick or something at most. You end up getting a player for player of that caliber. And we'll get into Minkah Fitzpatrick, his pros, his cons at age almost 29 now. But, yeah, man, that part of the trade I thought was really good. I was like, man, I can't believe Pittsburgh did this. Then the other shoe drops. They end up getting Jonnu Smith for the pick swap.
Mhm.
That's the one to me that stings. Like Tom Grossi, who puts out fantastic videos
Mhm.
of
Oh,
every
I love
team's
him, dude.
reactions.
I love him. He's
He
so good.
nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Like both happy and sad is the best way to put it about that trade. Because
Yeah.
even though we all kind of knew at this point Jonnu wasn't getting that contract extension,
No.
it sucks to see him go. But I'm also happy to get the contract.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, we as a podcast, right? And I think it's fair that I can speak for all four of us. It's one of those things where, you know, we're pro player money, right? We want you go get your bag, right? Go get your bag, go do your thing. But at the same time, it's like I don't know if I want Miami to pay $12 million for a 30 whatever year old tight end. You know, I understand, fully understand and appreciate what he did, right?
Best statistical season at tight end in this franchise's history.
In franchise history. Awesome, right? I mean, he was due his money. But the problem is I just can't justify paying a player that statistically, historically, when a tight end hits that age, outside of the 1 in a million, like the Kelseys and the Kittles and the Gonzalez from back in the day, it's like a Xavier Howard all over again, right? He's a Pro Bowl 1 year and bam. I think last season was the best season we will see from Jonnu Smith for the rest of his career. And it was his best season as a player, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he caught 88 passes, 884 yards, 8 touchdowns, and earned his first Pro Bowl. I don't think it's going to get much better than that. So I think, okay, yeah, I think he was underpaid for his value or for what he provided from a value standpoint, right? I mean, he was, what did we pay him? $4 million, I think, right? Last season, something like that.
Yeah.
And he he blew everything out of the water. Great, awesome. Go get your bag. You're not getting it from us.
Yeah, and not only that, just to quickly talk about the Steelers aspect of it, I get what the Steelers are doing here. It does make a lot of sense. I generally do, because Dolphins are my team. Don't get me wrong, but I do generally like the Steelers. A couple of my family members are Steeler fans. I feel like it does kind of bleed over. I do like Aaron Rodgers. I do think he talks a whole lot more than he should. But I came up in that era that like Aaron Rodgers was awesome, and people still talk about Brett Favre. And I was like, man, I think Rodgers is better than Favre. But it was still that time where people were talking about Favre being that guy. And I'm like, nah, I don't think he is. So I'm a little, I guess, defensive there.
Well, you don't. So let me really quick. I don't mean to interrupt you on that.
You're good.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers is still the Aaron Rodgers that he was at 44 years old after the season he put together with the Jets?
No,
because
I think he still
needs to retire.
I think he does. I think it's what he's doing makes sense. Go out with the Steelers one last season. Hopefully not a whole lot of drama, but that's Aaron Rodgers, so we'll see on that one. But the thing is, though, is you see like Rodgers, you see DK Metcalf, you go get Jalen Ramsey, and you get Jonnu Smith to be another receiving option. And I do really like what they're doing. They got Caleb Johnson in the draft, somebody I was a big fan of. Like, I do like what the Steelers did here. It feels like they are going all in. And going now to the Dolphins side of this, it feels like a move that isn't – like we talk about resetting, right? The Dolphins soft rebuild and what have you.
Yeah.
It's the perfect move to at least – deflect those conversations because you're getting a former all-pro safety who a lot of Dolphin fans really loved before he left, and the reason why he left we can get into later, but you're getting somebody who's still not 30 yet. Like there's still a lot of left in the tank, I think, with Minkah Fitzpatrick player. And
even though he had a down year last year, he's still 28, and I still think he's an elite ball hawk at safety.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, no, I'm going to be –
good move.
I got to be honest with you. From a Steelers standpoint, this doesn't – I like some of their moves on the surface, right? From a player standpoint, from a fit standpoint, yeah. But for me, I grew up – I'm a little older than you, as regular viewers of the show know. And I grew up in the era – I mean, up until maybe the last 3-4 years, where I'm used to the Pittsburgh Steelers not seeming desperate. They don't make these kind of moves. They stay put. They prefer and I'm trying to think of an eloquent way of saying this, right? But they basically, right, at a high level, seem to and have a historical kind of context, if you will, to follow. They go after players that are going into their prime, not players that are exiting their prime. Which, if you look at the moves they've made in the last 2 or 3 years, most of them, and sorry for you guys that are Steelers fans, to me it just seems like they're seeing that this whole thing is about to get switched up from top down, not just players, but from top down. And they're grasping at straws and they seem very desperate. All of these moves to me reek of desperation and not heavy desperation. Just, it doesn't make sense. Like to me, Jalen Ramsey and Minkah Fitzpatrick are kind of a 1-to-1 swap, right? I mean, yes, I understand Ramsey plays cornerback and Minkah plays safety.
Few years difference, all that kind of
but
stuff.
But you sacrificed a multi-time Pro Bowler and a 3-time first-team All-Pro that, yes, admittedly had a down year last year. And there have been discussions in the Steelers. I mean, I follow all NFL teams that over the last year and a half, everyone's been, I mean, I think Minkah only has 2 interceptions in the last year and a half or something like that. I don't have the stats in front of me, but so yeah, okay, questionable ball production, if you will, from a star safety, but you just got older. You just brought in a player that on 3 separate occasions, and this is a player in Ramsey, on 3 separate occasions, has forced his way out of a team because he wasn't happy with the toilet paper, or he wasn't happy with his left sock, or he didn't like the way somebody blinked at him. So he throws a temper tantrum, says he's injured, which we all know is bullshit, just to get traded, and then he plays the next day. And then somehow he continuously gets a pay raise. I don't know. This man is a genius. I hate it, but he's a genius, right? So to me, it just, I don't know. I'm kind of sour on Ramsey. I was excited when we got him. I'm sour on him now because of his attitude and the way he, what he did to this team and how all of the reports coming out that he soured the locker room. He was a big issue. There was a big issue with him in the locker room. Separating players and dividing the locker room with this nonsense. So, yeah, I will say this: I'm stoked to have Fitzpatrick back because I absolutely hated when he left because I liked him coming out of Alabama.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
I was the same way. I loved Fitzpatrick coming out of Alabama. Glad we got him. Mm-hmm. Then the whole thing with the Flores and he wasn't wanting to move around because he thought it hindered his development as a player. So trade him off.
Then he goes to Pittsburgh and he does the same thing, right?
Well, I think he's stuck at like a position for a year or 2 to actually develop, and then they started moving him around.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I think that's what happened. Steelers fans, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there.
Yes, please, and understand we are not crapping on this. Like, hey, if you guys are happy with it, by all means, you took a headache off of our hands.
And that's kind of where that's where I wanted to really end up at, because that's where this trade, people are going like, who won, the Dolphins or Steelers? I think both teams got what they wanted, and both teams at least came out even.
Yes, and for those of you that are watching, right, we're talking high level this trade. Let's dive into the player analysis, right? Let's look at Minkah, let's look at Jalen, let's look at Jonnu, and then let's wrap up this segment right before we move on to the other trade that we made, and talk about team. Let's grade it, right? Let's be media experts, if you will, right? And let's trade this, right? So, you want to talk about Minkah?
Yeah. So if Minkah is willing to move around, which we already talked about here, I think he could end up being this team's Kyle Hamilton, which is something that we talked about a lot during the draft process, especially you, Josh, because you were really pounding the table for a while there for Nick Imanwari and also Malachi Starks as 2 freaks who could end up moving different places in the secondary. So that would be fantastic if that's something he was wanting to do. And also, even if he's not wanting to do that, and maybe Weaver doesn't even want him to do that, he's still a damn good safety anyways. And there's a few players on this team I think you can move around and do that kind of job, and you can kind of share the load there. Considering the lack of attention Fitzpatrick's return has gotten from Miami and Fitzpatrick itself, I am speculating he could be wanting a new deal. considering, he was on the tail end of his deal in Pittsburgh, and a lot of fans are thinking the same thing. So it would make a lot of sense if there was some kind of deal in the next few weeks. Getting into the pros and cons of Fitzpatrick, I saw a few games of his. Still high football IQ, closing speed's there, physicality. He isn't a let the wide receiver catch the ball and then react type of player, for better or worse. Like, he's going to come in swinging. The hybrid skill set makes him a mismatch in various ways. Again, if he's willing to play that way and if Weaver wants to play him that way. Going back to the physicality thing, he's a potential tone setter on defense.
I like that. Yeah.
So much of this offseason has been us talking about, like, man, we got to get guys who want to be in that locker room. The Dolphins have got to get those kind of guys. And we've seen Kenneth Grant, Jonah, Jordan Phillips, some of the guys that you might hear from in other videos here soon from us. And it fits that bill. He's a vet presence in the locker room and also in the secondary room that's young and mostly unproven. 28 years old, turns 29 in November, still has a lot left in the tank in terms of athleticism and ability. 2022, Josh, you mentioned it, phenomenal season. 96 total tackles, 6 picks, 1 touchdown, 11 passes deflected, 1 kick blocked, all in 15 games. In 2024, which a lot of people are saying is a down year, 96 total tackles, 1 forced fumble, 1 pick, 4 passes deflected, all in 17 games. Now, in terms of the cons, Josh, you also mentioned this earlier, only 1 interception in the last 2 seasons.
I thought it was 2. I thought I read 2. Was it 1?
I think it was just 1.
Yeah, Jesus.
It might be 2. I might have had that wrong.
Because he had one last year.
Yeah. Did he have one in 2023?
I thought he did. It doesn't matter. It's 1 or 2.
He missed 7 total games in 2023 due to hamstring and knee injuries. He signed a 4-year, almost $73 million contract with Pittsburgh in June 2022. Has 2 years left on his contract, but there are no guarantees left in that contract per over the cap. I already talked about the contract stuff. And last time he was in Miami, he didn't want to move around. So there's a bit of uncertainty there, I think, as Dolphin fans. So those are the pros and cons for me and how I kind of feel about Fitzpatrick coming back. What about you, man?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, you touched on a lot of it, right? So, I mean, 28, I think I still think he has the potential to be an elite ball hawk safety, right, in this league. I know he can move around a little bit. I know he can do all that. But the big things that I wrote down for him was he brings name recognition to the safety room, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at, and we've said it on the show a million times, I've heard it on other podcasts and other, national media shows. Miami has a killer defensive line. Spoiler alert, we're about to get to that. They have really good linebackers. They added really good linebackers from a depth standpoint. But the secondary is, I wouldn't say atrocious, but there isn't any kind of name recognition outside of Jalen Ramsey, right? And now that he's gone, Minka brings that name recognition back to the room. The other thing I wrote,
a little bit better.
It does, right?
It really does.
Because what he can do and what he's shown he can do is cover up some of the blemishes, if you will, right, of a young secondary, which is what we have. And with that comes one of the big reasons why I like this move is because it allows the other safeties to kind of take a step back into the roles that they should be in, if that makes sense, right? So we're not having a player like Imanwari or Davis starting when I think Davis is.
You mean Melifonwu?
What did I say?
Imanwari. We didn't draft Imanwari. I know you wanted him.
I know I did. Sorry, that was a Freudian slip there, ladies and gentlemen. Probably, yeah, of course they did. But my point stands, right? It allows players to kind of step into the roles that they should be in, right? Where it's a secondary safety and a backup safety instead of a starting safety and a secondary safety. And I love that, right? Because that makes that whole entire room exponentially better. And it covers up the back end of the defense. So even if our younger cornerbacks struggle at times, which we all know they will, I have confidence, which I can't say that I've had in quite some time, even when we had Holland, that Minka Fitzpatrick will step up and make that hit. Will step into the box and hit that gap for a TFL, right? I mean, in 2024, you touched on it: 96 tackles, 1 interception, 4 pass defense in 17 games, and he was a Pro Bowler. And that was probably his worst season as a pro. So I would take that. Maybe I want to see the interceptions come up by 2 or 3, but if that's the kind of season we get, sign me up, dude.
Yeah, and I think if you're taking out that 2023 year where he was injured, 2024 was the down year of Minka Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And a lot has been talked about the interceptions, the turnovers going down, and that is something to note. The injuries are something to note. They're not just like, oh, hand wave them away. We got Minka Fitzpatrick in his prime, no issues. No, there's still some concerns, just to say there. But I don't think everything you mentioned, name recognition, all the stuff I was talking about, his play style, the tenacity he plays with. Yeah. This defense desperately needs something like that. You brought up the safety room. I like this safety room. The more I looked into it and the more like we've heard about it. But I wasn't really thrilled about Ashton Davis and Melifonwu being the starters, and hopefully both of them work. Because what are the odds both of them work out? You know,
I mean, there's a chance, dude. If they're, and that's why I think a move like this is so important, right? This touches on what I was just saying. It allows them to play the role that they should be playing, not
exactly
stepping out into a role that they're like, wait a minute, I've never done this before, but you want me to do what? You know what I mean?
Now you have one clear-cut starter, a star in the secondary to still be that leader there. But now you got Melifonwu, you got Ashton Davis. Ashton Davis, I assume, will probably be the backup out of those two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You probably, and not only that, you got Elijah Campbell, you got Patrick McMorris. These guys aren't being forced into the deep end now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Campbell makes this team now. I really don't. You know what I mean?
There is some versatility there, plus the special teams. But then you think about Dante Trader Jr., who was drafted in the 5th round, who maybe he ends up making the roster. So maybe you're right. Maybe Trader ends up taking Campbell's job.
Yeah, well, don't forget, in the preseason last year before his injury, McMorris looked like a starter. I mean, if go back out of sight, out of mind, this is a what have you done for me lately league. I fully understand that. And the fact that he was an undrafted free agent, understand the expectations are low, but go back and watch and read reports from practices and go back and watch highlights from the preseason before he got injured. The dude was a baller, and he's coming back after a full year of recovery and weight and putting on weight and being in a professional locker room and working with the coaches on the mental side of the game. I really do think he's a sleeper on this team. I really, really do.
Yeah, and it's a lot to ask out of a 6th-round pick who I remember when the Dolphins drafted him, I was sitting there going like, who? That's not a real name. Patrick McMorris?
Yeah.
And then it's hard to even find film of him. It really was. But what he put on film in preseason and what he did at Cal as well, like, I really like what I saw. It's hard to be like 6th-round pick, undrafted free agents, what have you. They're going to be starters. But there is something there with McMorris. I really believe that.
And he's big. He's a big dude that thumps. You know, I don't know. I'm excited. With this Minka move, this safety room to me is set. I don't think we need to make another move. I think it's in really good shape, which means the only room that there are really questions about across the board from start to finish, barring any other moves, is the cornerback room, right? And we're not going to talk about that today. We have a whole show, ladies and gentlemen, coming up probably next week or the week after on the cornerback room. So stay tuned for that. But now, anything else? Last thoughts on Minka before we jump over to analyzing kind of what Ramsey and Jonnu Smith did for us last year, kind of for those Steelers fans that are chiming in?
No, not really, except for the tee you up for later here. After this trade, it was corners by far a need and also tight ends a need, but the Dolphins would make a move one day later that would really shock a lot of people, including both of us here.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. It's almost like we do this for a living, right? That was a perfect cue up. All right, Jalen Ramsey, you want the floor, sir, or would you like me to start?
I would like you to start. because I
Okay.
didn't have a whole lot on Ramsey and
Yeah, neither do I. I could talk for hours about his attitude. I'm just kidding. So 30-year-old shutdown corner. I still think he has the capability when he's engaged, when he likes the situation and he's, in a good mood, right? If he wakes up on the right side of the bed, I think he still has the capabilities to be I don't know how to say this properly. He's still a top corner in my opinion, not the top corner, but one of the top corners with in that top group, mediocre shutdown corner ability, if that makes sense, right? Can't think of another way of saying it, right? So
he's a top tier corner that occasionally will get burned, and you'll
yes,
sit there going, "How did Jalen Ramsey get burned?"
by Brian
And then 3
Thomas
plays
in his
later,
very first game.
yeah, and then 3 plays later, the running back will be making some kind of crazy play. Ramsey comes in, absolutely lays him out, and you're like, there you go, it makes up for it.
Yeah.
So he's that kind of player at this point to me.
Yeah,
Somebody who's still elite, but not
consistent.
Consistently shut down Hall of Fame corner I think he used to be.
Yeah,
with Jacksonville in early days with the Rams.
Exactly. And he's got 24 career interceptions. He still has his all-pro pedigree. He's got the mental fortitude that's needed to kind of shoulder that kind of weight. It's just his attitude. His attitude is piss poor. And I think we saw it firsthand. And you go back and look at what he did and how he got himself out of LA to come to Miami in the first place. He threw a temper tantrum. He claimed he was injured. They traded him. He played the next week. So, I mean, unfortunately, that's what the Steelers are getting. Now, I do think on the flip side of that, on the positive side, you're getting an engaged. I do believe for this season, at least, Jalen Ramsey will be engaged because he is going to be alongside Slay and Porter Jr. That is a scary trio, right?
With Mike Tomlin as well as the head coach. And
yeah,
as much, and not to go back into the all-in thing with the Steelers, but I think that is important. Like, that's a team that at least is giving off. And it is interesting. You said it's desperation. It might be like maybe that might be generational, to whereas what you see as desperation, I do see is like the Steelers finally going all in, making moves that I've kind of wanted to see them do for years. So I'm interested to see what people think about it in the comments. But I think you will see a more motivated Ramsey this season with that mindset.
For sure. And Ramsey, I think his mentality of the game and how the Steelers kind of coaching staff approaches the game, I think it fits a lot better than it did with Mike McDaniel, who's more of, and those of you that have watched this show on even a semi-regular basis, Mike McDaniel is kind of like your best friend. He wants everyone to sing Kumbaya. He's going to give everyone high fives. He's going to slap you on the ass. He's going to tell you how great of a player you are, how great of a human you are, how great of a dad you are, irregardless of what's going on and off the field, right? And Jalen Ramsey seemed to enjoy that in the beginning, but it got old for him very quickly. And I think he gels a lot more with the mindset that the Steelers approach the game with. I'm not saying that Mike McDaniel's approach is bad, good, or indifferent. I have my own opinions. I know you, Taylor, you have your opinions, and I know Keith and Anthony have theirs, right? But I think Jalen Ramsey is a much better fit from a mentality standpoint for the Steelers locker room than he ever was for Miami. 2024, Ramsey, 60 tackles, 2 INTs, and 11 pass defenses, which is insane. Going into his 30-year-old kind of season, his 31, will he be 31 this season? I can't remember. Either way, 30 or 31. I think
it was 30 last year.
This is the time, and this is why I love the spoiler alert when we get into the grades. This is why I love the trade for Miami a lot more than I love it for the Steelers. This is when you see the hard drop-off for most cornerbacks is post 30, right? So we'll see, What about Jonnu Smith? What do you got for him?
With Jonnu, I'm glad he got paid. I think he is a starting tight end in this league. I think he can replicate what he did last year. Because also, you think about his season in Atlanta with Kyle Pitts, he was the tight end too. Arthur Smith being the head coach there. At times, and I think most of that season, he outplayed Kyle Pitts. He was the best tight end in that room.
For sure. Kyle Pitts has been a bust, for lack of a better term. Yep.
Yeah. Which is funny considering that was the name thrown around for the Dolphins trade.
I would have been fine with him, dude, because we would have gotten him for cheap, and he was young and very athletic. So, change of scenery sometimes can do wonders for a player.
But we'll get into all that when we talk about Darren Waller.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about Jonnu here, I'm happy for him, and I hope he can continue that success,
Me
considering
too.
the coach. And while I don't think you said it before, like Aaron Rodgers is not the same Aaron Rodgers.
No.
All he's got to do is play decent. With that team he's got, just play decent, and Johnny will help you produce.
Yeah. I mean, if you – oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
The only problem I have, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
go off with everything you guys say, but the only problem I have is you look at that roster and you're like, okay, he's probably the second wide receiver there. You got DK and then you got Jonnu. But then you look at the tight end room specifically, Pat Freiermuth. You still got Washington. And then Jonnu. It's a weird room. I'm surprised they kept Washington. I'm surprised they didn't trade Washington in that trade with us.
Yeah. Don't they have George Pickens too, or did he get traded?
Yeah, he got traded to Dallas.
That's right. And they have Roman Wilson, who was a rookie last year, right? Who I really like. And yeah, Jesus. Yeah, he might be wide receiver too. You're not kidding. And, honestly, if you look at what he did last year, right? I know we talked about it at the top of the show, right? 88 catches, 884 yards, 8 touchdowns, broke, I think, damn near every Miami Dolphins tight end record outside of maybe games played and stuff like that, right? But from a key statistical category, broke all of them. And that was with 5 different quarterbacks, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and be the game manager that they need him to be, they don't need him to be the Aaron Rodgers of old. They need him to be
just
a game
decent.
manager.
That's all you gotta be. You just gotta be decent.
Be a Matthew Stafford, right? That's all they need.
That's it. I'm gonna let you stand on that one. I still think Stafford is
so do I.
Top tier guy.
That's not an indictment on Stafford, but the Rams had, at least since they've had Stafford, maybe not this year, but they've had so much talent. They just need Stafford not to screw up. And they need him to make a big play every now and then. That's not an indictment on Stafford at all. I love Stafford. I have him on my Dynasty League.
Oh, I just came up with an idea, by the way. I think we should do a quarterback list with all 4 of us. Let's get some clicks here. Let's do a top 10 NFL quarterbacks.
I like it.
One of these days.
Yeah. Write it down on your notebook, and we'll chat about it in the group chat. But I think Jonnu can replicate. I don't think he'll have as many yards because I do feel like that offense is going to lean heavily kind of into their DK Metcalf running back room, right? DK Metcalf is the wide receiver, and Warren and whomever else they have as their running back. I think that's where they're going to lead with passes out of the backfield and stuff like that. But Aaron Rodgers uses his tight ends really well. I mean, he carved us up when he was with the Jets in the last Jets game of this year, or of last season. And I like it for him. Jonnu Smith, I will always have love for. Jalen Ramsey, I'm glad he's gone, right? And that's kind of where I sit with this. So, unless you have anything else to talk about or to touch on about Jonnu, what do you say? I cede the floor to you, sir. And you tell me, and you give us, and I will give mine when I'm done, or when you're done. A trade grade, say that 5 times fast, for Miami for what they got, and don't forget to include the draft picks, and the trade grade for Pittsburgh. The floor is yours, sir.
Oh, I'm gonna play this right on the fence. I'm gonna give both teams a B. I really think about what I said earlier, man. I like what both teams are doing. Mm-hmm. Both of them fit Dolphins want to get a little bit younger. They want to build more of a physical team. They don't make a move that really feels like, oh, it's just a rebuild. So It's not a draft pick. They get an actual player that will help this season. Pittsburgh continuing their moves to go all in. Only thing I really don't like on the Pittsburgh front is, for one, the tight end room, like I mentioned, is just a bit weird. There's 3 of them now. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And, well, I guess Johnny was just complaining slot a lot. And also, that safety room is now a bit questionable for them. Maybe they end up playing Ramsey a bit there, too. I think I read something about that online a few days ago. But other than that, man, I like this trade for both teams. It's a rare trade that I think will work out for both teams.
Yeah, and my grade is not as nice as yours for one team, and it's a little nicer for another. I think this was a dominant trade in Miami's favor, and I don't think it's really close. I think I gave Miami an A-, and I gave Pitt a C+. Right. That is not to say that I don't think all of the players that moved are going to do well on their teams, because I do think it's a win-win-win for everyone. But you look at the salary that the Pittsburgh Steelers took on, plus the pay raises for both players, versus what Miami was able to get in return and get off of from a salary standpoint, I think heavily favors, and a better draft pick and a younger player that's also an all-pro that's still in his prime. I mean, I don't think it's close from all of those standpoints. I mean, Miami gained an elite safety in Fitzpatrick. We offloaded a buttload of cap space. I think we only paid, keep me honest, was it $3 million, $5 million, something like that of total of Ramsey's salary. Steelers took on everything else, plus gave him.
I think it's 7 total, including what the Dolphins already paid him.
Yeah. So, they also, then the Steelers also gave him a raise. Right. Then they got Jonnu, and we got Jonnu off of our books. And then they gave him a 400% raise at $12 million. And we got Fitzpatrick for 2 years. Yes, we might have to, we're going to see how my assumption is we'll see how he plays this year. And then we'll start talking in the next off season about either re-signing him or trading him or releasing him or whatever the hell. But yeah, I mean, look, this isn't an A+ for me because the tight end room took a hit. Right. And the player that we will talk about momentarily here doesn't fix it for me just yet. Right. I mean, I think I'm not going to sell the ship here just yet. But, it was an interesting choice from Pittsburgh's standpoint. Right. You took on a headache. You gave him more money yet again. You took on a really good player, but an aging player at his position. You gave him more money. And it reeks of desperation to what I alluded to earlier from my point of view. So sorry for you Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Unfortunately, not a huge fan. I think it's an average trade, C+, right? It's not a bad nor a good trade. Grade for you guys. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
You're thinking about long-term as well, which I understand.
Well, yeah, of course.
Because Nico, the younger player, but also to play devil's avocado here, with Steelers and Jonnu Smith, if Jonnu does end up being able to replicate that, and maybe he was just a late bloomer in terms of becoming that Pro Bowl caliber player, then it becomes much more, I think in your eyes, it would be much more even. Yeah. Because the Steelers would be getting a player that's not just a 2-3 years, ideally about 4 to 5.
I'll be shocked if Jonnu plays 4 more years, if I'm being honest. But if they get him for 4 more years and he's even 85% of what he was last year, that's a home run for them, right? I think their biggest dollar investment and asset investment is Ramsey and Fitzpatrick. And I think Ramsey is a walking time bomb, right? Just a powder keg of a shit show emotion.
A pure star power, but also could just ruin
the entire
locker room.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. So,
we're also benefited. That's because you saw what happened with the Rams. I truly don't know how I feel about Jalen Ramsey, considering his entire career. The stuff that went down in Jacksonville, him almost leading the team on defense to get him to the Super Bowl that one year, going to the Rams, winning a Super Bowl, the years he spent here, like, what a weird career to me.